Okay, great. Okay, so we are talking about how to find clarity in chaos today, which is hugely relevant right now from the micro to
Totally.
the macro. If you're talking about the pandemic, the US election, relationship you have with someone, or finances, a job, what have you, I'm sure there's a place in life in which we would like more clarity on how to move forward with something. So before we get
Always.
into talking about that and our own tips and techniques on finding more clarity, let's just quickly introduce ourselves. So I'll let you go first, and then I'll introduce myself.
Thanks. So I'm Tiffany. You may know me already, but I'm coaching divorcees on thriving through divorce, which can definitely be chaotic. And I'm in
Yeah.
Southwest France, if I hadn't mentioned that before, yeah.
Ah, beautiful.
And you,
And
Danielle.
and I'm Danielle Sunberg, and I am a transformational coach and Reiki master. And so this is something that a lot of my clients are coming to me with right now and looking for is where is my clarity and how do I get it back? Or what does it
Right.
even look like to have clarity? Because they're not, it, you can become so lost that you don't even resonate with what does it feel like to be clear on something? How will I know if I have clarity? And there's that confusion layer on
True.
top of it too.
Yeah, and even if you had clarity before, it's now everything's
How
changing
do you
from week
know
to
when you
week.
have it?
Yeah. Oh, you were just cutting out for 1 second. But yeah, it's not like you can just pause life and stop it and then get clarity. And we don't want to be in this state of constant reaction without being able to plan and create a vision and have that clarity. But even in this situation right now, as you mentioned, it's very challenging.
So how do you know if you have clarity around something? What does it feel like for you, Tiff?
For well, for me, the first sign definitely is that I'm not reacting or if I'm not at the affect of something. I actually have the inner calm, but also the foresight to kind of see and be sovereign over the planning and over what's coming. So that I don't feel like there's any situation that I won't be able to handle. But it's more than just like thinking of every detail ahead. It's I have a strong sense of like inner knowing when I know something rings true. It doesn't sound like it's going through a distorted speaker when it's coming to me. When it's coming through really clear and strong and straight, and I know that it's truth, that for me is clarity, which only gets confirmed externally through everything else that happens. But it usually does start internally for me. What about you?
Yeah, I think that's, hitting the nail on the head. That clarity comes from within us. And, I have a quote I wrote it down because I wanted to say it on here that nobody can give you wiser advice than yourself. And that is a quote from
Yeah.
Cicero. And I think that it's super relevant from the time of Cicero to today because it remains true that fundamental human nature is that clarity lies within us. It's something internal. You can't go get it. You can't go shopping for it. You can't go get it through meditating or through yoga or through a walk in the woods. It's actually already in you.
Mm,
And the act of doing the yoga or the meditation is to calm the chaos to allow that clarity to rise up, right?
that's a really, really well put, actually. I think that cutting down all of the peripheral noise, it might be our biggest challenge right now, especially and understanding what noise is yours and what noise isn't. And so I've turned into kind of like a mental minimalist where I've decided that I'm only going to take on like two or three big topics at a time because I know beyond that, I'm not going to have clarity just from sheer volume, much less everything else that's going on. So like I can create my own noise by endlessly researching or diving into like deep topics that I'm interested in. You know, when you get on the web and you're like, oh my gosh, this rabbit hole goes so deep. No, I have to like refrain and go, okay, yes, I'm going to deep study like on two things. And everything other than that, I'm actually creating noise for myself. But of course, we have, all the external noise that we're dealing with on top of that.
So how can you tell if something is your own issue that you're needing clarity on, or if it's someone else's chaos?
That that's a really good question because I think trying to figure out which monkeys are yours and which monkeys are part of someone else's circus, or figuring out how to stay in your lane, is really challenging right now because we have a media and we have access to information that gives us the impression that everything's in our lane, that we have to take care of everything and we have to know about everything. We have to be involved in, especially like the latest news. We don't know what could happen. When you take a step back, you realize that you actually have very little to do with the situation or very much influence that you can actually have on the situation. And it's really, they're vying for your attention in that way. So it's easy to say, oh, I don't want to, get in that person's business or get in that person's drama, or take their stress upon me, or like what they're saying doesn't apply to me. I don't have to take it personally. But when you're kind of going on with this international narrative of all this stuff is going on and we need to know about it, I would say, um, I've gotten into the videos of Daniel Schmachtenberger where he's saying, you don't have to be a specialist in everything, and if you're pretending to be a specialist in everything, you're lying to yourself. So just pick one thing and really care about it and really make a difference in it. Pick the one thing that you're supposed to birth and bring into the world and actually be a specialist in that thing, and kind of let the rest go and say, like, it's okay to not know. Say, I don't know. How do you deal with that, with everything that's going on with all the noise and your internal and external noise?
You know, what you're saying reminds me of people who are like, I'm just not watching the news anymore. I don't check my phone. I don't listen. I don't watch. I just can't handle it because they know that that's the external noise that's pushing on them and causing stress, overwhelm, chaos, feelings of feeling stuck because you don't have control over what's going on with the pandemic and all the fear. And so
Right.
people just cut it out, right? That's one way to just cut it. Like if you can cut it out by just not looking at your device and not turning on the news, that helps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, the other thing is it's something that we say a lot in I think in our line of work because it applies to everything, which is being present, right? If you
Mm,
are caught up in the fear of the chaos of whatever the thing is, let's just say the pandemic. Well, you're already in the future. Your mind is out there thinking about what's going to happen down the line,
true.
what your life is going to look like, what's going to happen to your job, what's going to happen to your family, your house, all of these things. But in the actual moment, you're probably just sitting on your couch, uh, and maybe you're eating dinner, or, like you're watching TV. Like nothing is actually stress inducing about sitting on your couch. So
Yeah.
coming back to the present moment is a great way to calm the chaos. It's a lot of times tricky to do that because our minds are so good at being in prediction mode and they want to go there.
Mm-hmm.
They want to wander. So it takes a real amount of conscious willpower to bring it back into the present moment. And the one thing that I'll add that you brought up, that I love saying is when we feel like we're in a place of confusion or frustration, a kind of like, I don't know what decision to make next. I have no clarity. The truth is that you do. And you have the clarity to know that you're confused. And that sounds really counterintuitive, but it's true.
Mm,
And that's your inner wisdom rising up to say, hey, you got a lot of mental noise circling around you around whatever
yeah.
topic. You got to go calm it down. And that's the way that it can come through in that moment. And so just knowing that is available to you all the time. It's even coming through when you feel confused to show you the self-awareness of your own mental and emotional state.
Right.
Oh, like how much space does that already give you to say, okay, my clarity hasn't left me, it's still here.
Isn't that amazing how just the reminder that you know and trusting yourself to know can just already bring so much clarity? It's so
Mhm.
funny how, we just need that reminder or almost that permission just to be like, okay, you can trust yourself. You know exactly what is noise and what you need to pay attention to. But to take what you said to like the most extreme situation in my life, in my divorce, where I was super in the past, like, oh, what happened and that happened and this, awful thing. And then I was super in the future of like the horror of what might happen and what if this happens, what if that happens, trying to kind of almost chess strategize every single move that could possibly be made. And that was when just that moment I got really into the teachings of Eckhart Tolle about being in that moment. And just the realization was shocking to me of how if I just stopped, I was actually quite happy. Like, I was eating well, I was super healthy, I had a beautiful like countryside. I like, didn't have any actual stress in my life at that moment. I was having nice times with my family and I had not even realized how happy I was because I was so busy being unhappy about whatever was going on.
Yeah. And so was there something that, sparked that awareness that if you just came back to the present moment, everything calmed down? Like what made you stop swirling around in your head?
That's a good question because I think I mentally put that on myself while I was going through the teachings of Tolle, just having to remind myself regularly, especially when I was spinning. And as you
Mm.
said, like you realize that you're in this spin and you want to stop the spin, and you notice how to make it stop by just actually being in the moment and paying attention to what is truly really happening. But I now to this day, every time I'm in nature, I kind of, you have to stop because you have to admire the beauty, and you're like, wow, nature is just fine and abundant and happy, and I'm in it.
Yeah, nature is a great way to come back into the present moment. And what you're saying, I think, is exactly right, that once you know that it works,
Mm-hmm.
whenever you catch yourself in the spin, is it
Yeah.
great? You caught yourself. There's no like better time or worse time. Whenever you catch yourself is the best moment to then take the space and go take a walk in nature, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and actually something that I I've read that I haven't tried yet, but I think is a great technique for proactively finding clarity without getting into the spin first and then having to notice it and then stop yourself is
Yeah.
to actually go into your calendar and block off an hour or a half an hour somewhere in your day and call it your worry hour.
Hmm.
And that will actually mentally
Great.
compartmentalize when you're
Wow.
going to
Yeah.
spin. And then at least, outside of that hour, because you know that you've shelved it, that you have it available to you. You're not just trying to suppress it down. Because if you keep suppressing it, it will keep bobbing back up again. It's like a cork in the ocean, the worries. They keep
Yeah.
coming up. But if you say, okay, I have a time for you. I see it on my calendar. It's at 3 p.m. So from now till 3, I'm going to focus on blah, blah, blah. Then you can actually
Right.
focus on blah, blah, blah.
That's amazing because I bet with time, like if you were to do that regularly, it would just keep getting shorter and shorter, the amount of time that you would need to let yourself spin. I wonder
I
if
bet
you
it
like
would.
it, yeah. I wonder if it would just kind of like you'd run out of things to spin about.
Well, one of the problems that we encounter a lot with lack of clarity is a sense of distraction, that we distract ourselves from what we actually want to be doing because of whatever the worry is that keeps coming up in our minds and distracts us. And so to compartmentalize
Hmm.
some time, you get rid of one of the major issues that keep us from our clarity.
Yeah, that makes sense. we do self-distract a lot. And one thing that I was thinking about is kind of we have to build these tools into our lifestyle no matter what is changing or what's going on into the world, because there there is no order and there is no chaos, and there's always order and there's always chaos because we have this constant flow of life. And I think that, the safety, perhaps some safeties that we thought we had before have been revealed to us that we didn't have those safeties, and we were counting on certain safeties, or we count on things to be a certain way, and we have to like be okay with just what is, however it comes, completely accept what is, and not be in reaction, but build flow in to our lifestyles so that like whatever happens we can just ride the tide of it.
That is so true. And, it leads to really what the source of chaos is, which is what we've been talking about, which is our minds. It's not actually the thing itself. It's not the pandemic. It's not your divorce. It's not your relationship or your job or whatever that's causing you stress. It's your thoughts
Mm-hmm.
about the thing that are causing you to feel stressed out and chaotic.
Yeah.
So, so just giving yourself the accountability that it's you and your thoughts and not the thing itself is a little hard sometimes because we want it to be something outside of ourselves that's doing it to us, but it isn't. But what that also means is it's really empowering because it's in our power completely to control the chaos that we feel.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ways, actually, my favorite way right now that um, actually comes from Dr. Sri Kumar Rao, who is this incredible professor who has a wonderful course in personal mastery that he's taken across the entire US in business schools to teach. And the technique, he calls it good thing, bad thing, who knows? And it basically comes from this really ancient, some people think it's a Sufi story, some people think it's a Tao story. It's one of those ancient wisdom stories. And it's about this old man. Have you heard this story before?
Perhaps. Yeah, maybe
Okay.
with a sun and a horse.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a really good one. I love this one.
So there's an old man who wants to gain some wealth. He's dirt poor. And so he borrows a huge sum of money from his neighbors and he says, I'm going to go buy a horse and I'm going to breed horses. And they're like, okay, here's some money, go buy a horse. He buys his horse, he brings it home, he puts it in the pen, and about a week later, the horse flees the pen. It disappears. And the neighbors come out and they say to the old man, you owe us money, so how are you going to pay us back? And the man shrugs his shoulders and he says, good thing, bad thing, who knows? And the neighbors are like, no, it's a bad thing because you need to pay us. And he's like, good thing, bad thing, who knows? A couple weeks later, the horse comes back and it had been out gallivanting with a pack of wild stallions. And it got in with these stallions. They became friendly and they brought all these horses back with him to the pen. And now all of a sudden, this man has a pack of horses. And then the neighbors come out and they're like, wow, you're the wealthiest man in the whole village now. And the man shrugs his shoulders. He says, good thing, bad thing, who knows? Then his son is out riding the horses one day and he falls off and he gets trampled on and breaks both his legs. And the man says, good thing, bad thing, who knows? And then a week later, the king comes to the village to bring all the sons of all the families into his army for a war he's waging. And he lets the son stay with the father because both his legs are broken. Good thing, bad thing, who knows? So the story continues like this. And the point of the story is that when something happens, we want to judge it as a good thing or a bad thing.
Mm,
And then if we judge it a certain way, it causes us to have an emotional reaction. And if we judge it as a bad
yeah.
thing, we get stressed. But if we judge it as a good thing, then we feel, like success or happy and whatever. And then something else happens, and then we decide we can look back at it later and reassess how we feel about it. And we can do that our whole life. So it's never necessary to judge something because how you judge it changes with time and perspective and whatever happens next,
Mm.
right? So simply just asking this question about, oh, I think this is a bad thing, but could it possibly not be a bad thing? Changes your mental state from a place of despair and chaos and stress to hopefulness. And just doing that little question and asking that can just shift you just enough to save yourself from going down that rabbit hole of spinning. And then you can ask yourself, what could I do now that I'm in this place of hopefulness to make this thing not be a bad thing? And now you're in a place of empowered action. So
Okay.
these are
So,
just simple
yeah,
questions. Yeah.
you're taking essentially the whatever situation is coming your way and you're using the perspective to make the best out of it, turn it into a good thing, or perhaps um, dampen whatever negative thoughts or pain that you might be creating around it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's to your point of what you were saying before of just moving with the flow of life and accepting what is. It's our resistance to our expectation that isn't met that causes
Yeah.
us to feel stress. If we have a job that we're fired from, we don't expect that we're going to get fired, then we have a reaction to it that it's a bad thing. But if we can just go with the flow and say, maybe not, maybe something is coming down the pike that is now going to be available to me that wouldn't otherwise have been if I had been in this job, then you release a little bit of that resistance and it becomes less of a bad thing.
Yeah, and how many times have we seen that happen over and over where people think that they've lost something and it actually was just making space for the even better thing that was coming next? I know I see that as like a very frequent pattern in life, and people get so distraught because they can't see into the future.
Hmm.
So,
Right.
yeah.
With your divorce, I'm sure,
Well,
in the
yeah,
midst in
that
it.
was a huge one, and there's been so many since then, like so many really great things that have, come in every time I'm willing to let go of something that I was holding on to. There are a lot of people who live in resistance to like something new or something changing, and I'm I allow things to change very quickly, but sometimes I like, like I feel like I want to hold on to certain things as well. And that's the one that gets me, is like holding on to things that I really care about, or that I don't want to leave my realm. So,
Hmm.
but sometimes we do have to, things go and things come, and if we don't let them go, the other things don't come. So,
That is exactly right. And we forget how resilient we are too, to cope
yeah.
and thrive with change. And when we feel resonant with our own inner resilience and our own inner wisdom and can just trust that if we flow with life, it will come up for us when we need it and we will thrive and we will cope, then we don't have as much resistance to the thing and we can move through it with more clarity on the decisions we actually need to make to move forward.
That's something that I haven't actually heard in relationship to what we're dealing with globally, is a really good point and a really hopeful point about how resilient we really are as human beings, as being highly adaptable, highly intelligent, community minded beings, that we do have an amazing power to shift and adapt and thrive. We always have historically. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, if you look at a baby, right? Like looking at a baby is the perfect way to understand what our human nature is because babies haven't developed that rational thinking mind yet. So everything that a baby does is just innate intelligence. And you see a baby learn to crawl and walk and fall down and get back up again. And,
Hmm.
they cry and then they move on. And you just see how they're curious and they explore um, and they're resilient and they just keep bouncing back from all the times that they fall down. And like,
So true.
um, like
Yeah.
I was just playing with my daughter this morning and she took a real good knock on the head.
Yeah.
and, and like she gets back up and she tried again. And no one taught her to do that. No one said you need to do this again because you need to learn to walk. It's really important that you get the skill down. And she's like, "Okay, mom, got it." No, she just wants to. She's just motivated and
Yeah.
so that is fundamentally who we are underneath our chaotic minds. And so trusting that that's there to guide us forward is really all you need. It's that simple.
So beautiful. Yeah, I love that way of looking at it. Actually, we're just babies wanting to grow and explore and discover and yeah, and we'll take a knock to the head a few times, but no worries. We keep going,
Yeah,
keep
yeah.
going. I
So
love
there
that.
are there any other last techniques or tips that you want to add before we go?
Um, Let me think. If I had anything in my no, I think that was really key, but if we were just gonna like sum it up, I would say, you know, cut out the noise and the confusion, cut out the noise that isn't your basic foundational necessity noise, and go back to spirit, as you said, what you already know inside, and just really be present with that and trusting and accepting of what is. That's it. Sometimes it's hard to accept that what is happening is what should be happening. We like to say something else should be happening, but no, this it should be happening because it is happening. So so being present and accepting that, I think that gets us really a long way. And surprisingly, we can find clarity in the chaos. What's
I
your
think this I
what's your takeaway? What's your sum up of this? Yeah.
um I think that was a great sum up. The only thing I would add is um, asking yourself what you are confused about sometimes is really helpful. If
Hmm.
you are feeling a general sense of chaos and overwhelm, because right now the planet's pretty intense,
Yeah.
and saying, okay, well, what is it that I'm actually feeling confused about? What do I need clarity on? Well, first of all, just asking that question, you might find the clarity that you're looking for by giving focused attention to it. And second, you might realize that you're just absorbing the energy of, the news and like you're talking about the outside noise, and it's just general overwhelm and it doesn't belong to you. And once you realize that, just exhale, let it go for a walk in nature, do your yoga, whatever, and come
Hmm.
back to how you really feel.
Hmm. Yeah,
And so, yeah, just asking
exactly.
that simple question to yourself um,
Hmm.
has definitely been helpful for me. So, there's a lot of good tips and techniques in this little conversation. This is super packed full of awesome stuff. So, I'm really glad that we got to have this chat.
Yes, I hope that these techniques will be easily applicable for people. And since we have lots of different people, you should find one to your need or to your flavoring, and follow that rabbit trail to your clarity. So we'd love to have your feedback or your comments, to know if this was helpful to you. If you have any other questions, or if there's perhaps like another topic that you think would be salient and helpful, because we like to have these conversations,
Definitely.
these inter
Yeah, let us know.
intercontinental connections.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Tiff. This is so great. And I hope
Yes,
everyone
thank you.
enjoyed. and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks for hosting. Big kiss.
Kiss.
Bye.
Bye.